Because, anybody could do a poem. Anybody could tell you something. But certain people have the power to make you feel. Like, you have the power to make people feel, right? I have the power to make people feel. And we will be doing the world a disservice by stunting our voice.
God, I want to first ask that you allow us to be able to have the language to effectively articulate our stories. I want to thank you for allowing Fanta to be able to make it here safely. This is the first podcast in a long time and want to bring it back successfully. So I just ask that you watch over the room, allow everything to go according to your plan, and allow us to do what it is that you brought us here for. Amen.
I mean.
All right, we good.
Yeah.
All right, so look, y'all. This Off the Wake Up with Jordan Pierre. And it's been a few years since I've been able to bring back my podcast. I'm back in the city, and I want to find ways to bring back my village so we can effectively articulate our stories. And the person I have with me here today is a young lady I met. And it's crazy how we met. We actually met through a mutual friend. He had put us in a chat on Instagram. He's like, yo, I just feel like y'all need to meet. And I'm like, bet. I remember I seen her speak already. I seen her perform at Poetry Me Please, but I never conversed with her in person. So he put us in the chat. I texted her. We followed up. It was a genuine vibe. Then I invited her out to come meet to the mayor's house. So since then, we've been building, and she became a friend. And what I noticed is that there's a difference because we in a generation of social media. So we feel like when we see things on Instagram, it's like, oh, word, she good at what she do. But I didn't know it's a different feeling when you see it in person. It's like when you see her element, she seem more cool and casual in person. Then she get in her element, it's like you see a certain type of rage that that fulfills the spirit. So I wanted to make sure I introduced it to her. Her name is Fanta, right? She a legend in Harlem. I don't really like Harlem that much, but I like her because she a Raw Way fan. So it's all love. But I want to introduce her and let her talk. You can just briefly introduce yourself, and let's give it a applause for Fanta. Let's do it.
Yo, thank you, Jordan. My name is Fanta Ballo. I'm a poet, activist, author, basketball coach, all the above, from Harlem, New York, big Harlem. A little bit about me. I'm a teaching artist, so that means I teach poetry in schools from K through 12. I do a couple college workshops. I'm a full-time poet, so I tour. I just finished my tour this year. Hopefully, we could bring it back up next year. And, yeah, I just do poetry. I share my truth. I share my goals. I just started dropping merch, feel me? And, just trying to do all things under the sun and lead the people in the right way and inspire them through poetry.
Absolutely. So we're going to start, right? Because I know you much more than just a poet, but I want to start first with, I just seen you perform at the Apollo.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's my first time ever going to Apollo. I only went there because you was performing, right? Oh. So I'm gonna go support. And I know when you first got on the stage, you said that was a dream of yours. So I guess I first want you to talk about how was that experience and how did it feel for that dream to be coming true?
Honestly, like, it's like unreal. Like, I probably feel like I won't even fully understand the magnitude of what I did until I see the performances back. Because it was like literally an out-of-body experience. And I was super nervous, literally up until the point where I got on stage. Yeah. And it's like, I didn't see nothing. I didn't hear nothing. I was just like exactly where I needed to be, and like all the little the ooh and the ah. I was like, oh, it's lit, it's lit. I'm like, I'm here. Yeah. And at first I was like, yo, I'm not gonna look nowhere. I'm gonna look directly like in front of me. And then before I knew it, I was looking at the balcony. I was having my arms out. Yeah. So it was like, honestly, like when you grow up in Harlem, you walk past the Apollo all the time. You see like the legendary people that walk through there, but you never think like, oh, I could be one of those people that make it to the Apollo. So the fact that this actually happened in this year and the way it happened, it was just like unreal for me. But like I made sure that 10 minutes I was on stage, like I took my time. I didn't rush it. I was nowhere else. I was like fully locked in and enjoying the experience. So
and I felt it being in attendance. And one of the things I often say is that speaking is spiritual, right? Like there's sometimes where the spirit may take over you. And I wanted you to speak to that because you spoke to it. You say it's like you zoned in. It's like you ain't see nothing, and then you started to see things. And I want to know, like, when you performing, is there a time where you feel like your spirit leads you?
I think, honestly, all the time. And it's a different level that I learned that I had to tap into, right? And I feel like as long as I still care about the poetry, as long as I'm writing about the things that serve me, and as long as I feel like my story needs to be told, like, is something deeper than me. Like, I get told a lot, like, oh, like, you're a vessel or you're anointed. And for a long time, I didn't know what them people was talking about. Like, me? Like, what are you talking about? But then, as I started to, like, see the impact my words had on people and just the way I was able to bring feelings to words, it's like that's something above me. Like, that is a God-given ability that he gave to me and told me, Fanta, this is your way that you're going to reach your people. And I feel like it was on me to step into that. I feel like in 2024, I decided to step into that. Like, everything that spoke to me and everything that made me feel a way, like, I answered to it. I wrote to it. I showed up to it. If I had a poem on my heart, I don't care how I feel the crowd is going to react. I'm going to do that poem, right? And for a long time, I wasn't moving like that. I was moving on how other people will feel. If I hope they like me, I hope it resonated. And this year, it was just more so like, I'm going to do what's right on my heart, because as long as I'm following the path that God laid for me, like, everything is going to fall into place. And that's exactly what happened.
Facts. And I'm all for it. So, and I want to peel back the layers of your story. I want to talk about that Fanta when you was younger.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know, like, how you get from basketball, what was that transition to starting to know, like, I want to pick up the pen? And then when you did make that transition, how did you start to brush aside other people's perception of who you was?
Yo, it's so crazy. I was just in the store yesterday, and my old basketball coach saw me, and he was reminding me how nice I was and how people thought I was going to go D1, and sometimes it triggers me because it's like, damn, like, that's a whole nother font to that. Like, people don't know.
Right.
And, like, up until 8th grade, like, I was ball as life. Like, basketball every day. Always had a ball in hand. Like, I'm talking about, I used to sleep with a basketball. AAU. Played on the school team. Only girls on the boys team. I was, like, following my older brother around. Like, I just wanted, like, nobody could have told me I was going to the WBA. So back then, there was no NIL deals and all that. So my main thing was, I felt like I wasn't going to be able to make money off of poetry. Yeah. So, I mean, off of basketball. So I feel like that was one of the things that, like, like, when I stopped having to drive, like, that was one of the things that I told myself to make me feel better about stepping away from the game. I was like, oh, I wasn't going to make money from it anyway. But the real reason why I stepped away is because after 8th grade, you know, high schools, they all want you to go to their school, whatever. And I ended up going to the #1 high school, like, in PSAL, all right, in Brooklyn. And it was a great school, like, honestly, like, I love my teammates. I still talk to my teammates to this day. I still have respect for all of the coaching staff, but it wasn't the right fit for me. Yeah. So I wrote the bench. I was a freshman on varsity, right? But, like, my confidence and everything was just shot. Like, the moment I got there. And, like, I battled with a lot of mental health, but back then we didn't have the language for real, so I didn't really know it was mental health. And I let it eat me inside, and that really, like, took a toll on, like, my relationship with basketball. So when I left after 2 years, when I left South Shore after 2 years, I ended up going to college early. And once I went to college early, I went to Bard College at Simon's Rock, basketball dreams was kind of over for me. Because I also didn't understand eligibility requirements. It's like all the language we have now, I didn't have then. I didn't know I could still play if I had an associate's degree. So I assumed once I got into college, my eligibility was messed up. So I just, like, I'm going to just do this. And I just gave up on basketball. But honestly, I feel like if I would have went to a different high school, I probably would have still been playing ball. Like, on some fly J shit, but you know what I mean? We take it, and then with that transition, though, like, I started performing, like, open mics. Because I always did poetry. I just never, like, felt like it was something that I could do for real. It was something I did on the side for fun. Something you cool, you good at, but you don't really pour into. But then I started going to open mics at my college, and I started performing. And I remember I posted one of my poems on Facebook, like, just cause. And I got, like, 500 likes. I was like, wait, hold on.
Got a little
yeah, like, y'all like what I'm saying?
Into that, right.
So I'm like, oh, let me play around with this a little more. And then I just started performing more. I started going to more open mics. And then it was through that where I realized, okay, I have a gift for poetry. But it still wasn't something I knew I wanted to do. That came later, like in Albany, when I got the deal from Shawn Mendes. That is when I was like, oh, this is getting real. But it was a long battle. Like, it was a long push and pull before I realized, like, poetry is what I wanted to do.
So you got me thinking. There's a few questions I want to ask. And I'm going to speak to you how I usually speak to myself, right? I mean, the first one was you were saying, and I said this, and I'm writing a book, and I said, there's things that we experience as children that we didn't have the language at that time to effectively articulate like what it is that we was going through.
That's a fact.
And I want to know, how is there a poem that you feel, or how has poetry equipped you with the language to be able to articulate things that you felt and you like, I don't know a better way to say it but through writing?
Yeah.
Was there ever an experience or something that you went through in your life that you was like, the only way I got through it was through writing it, and that's the only way that helped me tell that story?
Yeah. Like that's actually what this book is, for all the things I never got to say. But even outside of the book, it was growing up, I also had a really strained relationship with my mom because I came out at such an early age. Well, I was actually forced out, but feel me? I came out at such an early age, and like I grew up in a traditionally African Muslim household. Yeah. So it's like, you can't be saying you gay. You can't be walking around here looking like a boy. Right. It was all of that, and I battled with that. So me and my mom always would like go at it, or like she would say things that would like really hurt me. But I just, also in the African household, you're not like, you can't talk back. Yeah. Like that's disrespect. Like rule number one is you never disrespect your parents, right? So it's like I always try to uphold that. So it's like me upholding, not talking back or being disrespectful. I suffered with a lot of internal, like, not knowing myself, not loving myself, longing for that maternal love. Yeah. So, like, one of my first poems that I did at a poetry slam was called Footnotes for My Mother. And that was my only way of communicating to my mom because I didn't have the language no other way, right? And in that poem, I'm like basically recalling the conversation of me talking to my mom when I came out, the things she said, and how it made me feel. And I never really told my mom how her words made me feel. Yeah. I can only do that through poetry.
Yeah, you didn't know how to say it.
Yeah, like
but when you wrote it.
When I wrote it, it was just flowing. I was like, nah, this is it. So yeah, that was the very instrumental point.
And I'm gonna get there. I'm wondering, even with that, so I think there's a difference when you have a craft that you perform amongst people that don't know you.
Yeah,
and you go up there and you tell your story.
That's a
and
fact.
People like, she's speaking. Has your parents or anybody ever seen you in your element before? And if they have, what was that first time?
My parents, they haven't seen me in person. And I think it's important to know with my parents, there's a language barrier. So they don't really understand everything I'm saying. Like, they just see that I'm talking, I'm moving, or whatever. Right. So I don't think they will ever really get the full magnitude of what I'm saying. But when it comes to, like, cousins and when it comes to my brothers and stuff, like, my friends and stuff, they've seen me perform. And I think performing in front of them, like, at least when it was, like, the first time, was the most nerve-wracking. Because it was like, damn, these people really know me. Right, but they've never heard me speak like this. Yeah, so I remember one time my younger brother really asked me, he like, yo, like, I didn't even know, like, he was like, is all this stuff in your poems true? I was like, yeah, bro. He was like, oh, I didn't know that. So it's like, it's definitely a different experience, but the reception and the response from everybody was always, like, positive. Like, everybody always was, like, positive. And I think that's another thing that kept me going.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because the first time my family ever seen me speak was my graduation speech. Yeah. Like, that's the first time they ever seen me in that mode. I call it like our element. Because who we are when we outside, we be joking. But when it's time for that work, it's like, it's a different character that come out. I don't never want to skip over your upbringing in regards to the household. So, and I believe I have a lot of friends that's born in a traditional African household. I just got a girl that's also African, and I never been in that. I never seen those type of traditions where the child, for the most part, is meant to be like silent. It's like you ain't supposed to be speaking that much. So I wanted to know first, like, how did that household? How did you discover your voice in the midst of being in a household in that structure? Right. What advice would you give to other youth that's being raised in those households on how to harness their voice, and like how you had to express it one way or another, right? But you couldn't do it in a household, maybe. So I want you to speak a little bit to that. So how did you discover your voice in that household? And what advice would you give to the other youth that's in African traditional households, like, to manage?
I would say, one, to answer the first part, the way I discovered my voice was through, like, the arts. So an arts program. So that was like after school, right? When we had like poetry or creative writing. And I was also through summer camp. I went to a camp called Broadway, which was empowering young girls from the inner city through the arts. So that was poetry, dance, singing, and something else, right? And that is where I first got the like the ability to express myself through the arts. So I was dancing because I like to dance, and then I and I used to rap as well. But then, I used to rap, and then eventually it turned into poetry. So I would say for me, the way I was able to express myself outside of my home was through the arts, programs, like after school programs and summer camps, and having teaching artists, the work that I do, having those people, they really made that space for me to express myself. And I would say for anybody going through the situation that I went through, one, I would really say, like, just letting you know, do not internalize anything, right? Because what I also had to learn is our parents have their own trauma. They was brought up a whole certain way, right? And sometimes they may say things that they don't really know the magnitude of what it means. In their head, they're just looking out for you, but they've never seen America, right? They weren't born here. They brought their child here, but they don't really know how to fully equip you for this world, and it can be scary. So do not internalize anything they say. Another thing is find your medium. Find your place outside of home. Doesn't have to be poetry. It could be basketball. It could be soccer. It could be taekwondo. It could be knitting. It could be whatever, right? Find your medium outside of the household and find somewhere that can make you calm. Just find somewhere that can keep you calm. Find a community of people that don't necessarily have to be your friends, but y'all have common interests, and when y'all meet in this certain place, they can help you take your mind off of things, right? Because just staying in that house, you're going to go crazy. You're going to go crazy. I done went all the way to Massachusetts trying to escape. Like, you got to go. And you got to spread your wings. And once you do that, because one thing Africans love more than anything is money. And they love success. And they can brag about their daughter or their son, they going to do it. So the success is the best. It's the best silencer, right? So focus on you. Do not internalize anything they say, right? Because once you make it and whatever you do, and it's not even just, because some people don't want to be successful, but once you make it to a point where you're happy with yourself, it's not nothing nobody or anybody could do that could deter you from your purpose, even your parents. But you have to get there. You can't get there sitting in the same place that's hurting you.
That's a fact. That's a bar. I know a lot of people be able to relate to that. Another part of like the moving in your calling. I know you spoke about it earlier. You said with basketball, you didn't know if you can be able to make profit through it.
That's a fact.
Right? But a lot of people would fear that also with poetry. Right? So what made you more inclined to say, I'm going to move in my purpose with poetry, even though I may not know if the profit going to be there to that same extent of a secure corporate job, right? Even you left your corporate job.
That's a fact.
So like I want you to speak to what made you be able to take that leap of faith and say, I'd rather move in my calling and in my purpose, even though I may not be able to foresee the profit that's going to come with it.
Yo, it's like, it was a feeling. I was at my job. I was working at King Bake at the time. I had just graduated, and I remember it was like a series of events, right? I remember feeling like, yo, like this is not it for me, right? Like I was working at the bank, but every night I was outside partying, and then I was going to work, and then I was outside again. I was going to work, but that's because I didn't really care for I was in a cycle, right? And then I remember I was on my lunch, right before my lunch break, I got a text from Shawn Mendes, and he said, hey, like I'm gonna be in New York, performing. Would you like to open up for me? And then cool, I was like, yes, of course, right? So then we get on the call. He's like, oh, it's just 1 minute. I hope that's fine. That's amazing. So I'm at work and I'm writing the poem on my work time. So like that's one thing you're not even supposed to do. And I'm not the type of careless person to move like that. But that's how I knew I was already checked out. Right. So then I go to the city. I told them some excuse of why I had to call out, right? Use my PTO, go to the city. I was there for a week. I performed twice with Shawn, and it was like a whole different experience, right? I was just like performing my poetry, and the people was just listening to me, resonating with me. I was buzzing on Twitter. It was just going crazy, right? And I still didn't really fully understand the magnitude of it. And then I come back to work, and they tell me I have like 3 days left for the rest of the year to call out. Mind you, this was in September. And I was like, I got this call in the middle of a work day,
Right.
and I had to drop everything and go.
Right.
That's going to happen again.
Right.
And you not telling me I can't call out. So it was in that moment where I was like, no, I cannot be here anymore.
Yeah.
Because I need to be available for whenever I get that call to be able to show up. And it was in that moment where I realized that my purpose was higher than this bank.
Yeah.
And it was like, I need to go all in on my dream or time is just going to pass me.
Right.
Because what's the point of graduating early if I'm going to waste 2 years in the bank?
Right. Right.
So that it was in that moment where I said, you gotta just bet on yourself. Like, there's a Twitter thread that I had, and I basically was talking about, like, my decision to actually leave. And I remember I called my mentor, and I was like, it's time. Like, I'm ready to go. And she got me a teaching opportunity. It was virtual. I did that for some time, just get my foot in the door, learn how to, like, teach an artist work. And then from there, it just grew. Right. And I was just, but it was in that moment where I realized that I had to be available. Yeah. And I needed to be working a job that made me flexible enough for when I got the call to do the poetry, right? Because at first the gigs wasn't every day. It wasn't every month. It wasn't even every week. It wasn't every 2 weeks. It was like very scarce.
But it can happen.
But it can happen.
Happens, you better be ready. Because you never know. Right.
You never know who gonna call you.
And what opportunity gonna be that opportunity, right?
That's a fact. So it was then I was like, nah, it's over. Then I started transitioning slowly but surely back to New York. Yeah. And then the opportunities doubled. And then it was just up from there. Yeah. It was like you have to be ready for that call. Yeah. Just like in basketball. Facts. It don't matter if you're the 15th player on that bench. When the coach call your number, you better be ready to play. That's it.
Yo, nah. So and I definitely agree. And I do affirmation. I say like I must go wherever God calls me. I say God used me as an instrument and vessel, so I must go where He sends me. Feel me? Like you just gotta be there. That's a fact. And when He call you, you gotta go. Gotta go. Whether you scared or not, right? And one of the questions I want to know is, have you ever been called for opportunity that you didn't feel prepared for?
I wouldn't say I didn't feel prepared for, but I would say that I feel like I didn't know if I could rise up to the occasion. Yeah. And I would say that will be times where companies will reach out to me or like organizations will reach out to me and they will specifically want me to write about something. So it's not a poem that I already have in my arsenal. It's something I got to create from scratch. And those are the ones that scare me the most. But it's never like I feel like I'm not prepared for it. Yeah. I just feel like I hope they like it because I'm used to performing poems 3-4 times in less intense spaces before I have to bring it to the big doors. Right. But when I gotta bring the big doors, to the big doors, the first call, you like, oh, okay, right. Time to lock in. Right. So I would say that like those are times like I would feel like, and then I would say there was one time where I felt like I was unprepared, and that was at the Do Something Foundation. They had booked me to do a event at the Futures Ball. And that's actually where I met Arnold. And I was commissioned to do a poem. And I was reading the poem, and during like the tech, my energy was just off because I was getting too much like directions, too many people telling me to do stuff. So like my energy, it was throwing me off. And you know, there's still people telling you like, you good, like don't worry about it. Because once you get into those spaces, it's a lot of moving parts. Everybody got something to say.
They want to talk to you.
Yeah,
not knowing that it's a form of preparation.
Feel me? Yeah. So I would say it was that one. I felt like I was so in my head that I didn't really give the piece its full power. Even though people still love the poem, it's just something in me that I was like, nah, I'm never letting that happen again. Like I gotta be fully locked in. Like can't nobody knock me off my pedestal.
What is your preparation? Being through your experiences, a lot of stuff like even as a speaker, I had to learn through the experience. Like there's times where I'm like, I don't want people to talk to me at least like that 5 to 10 minutes prior to, because it's a certain mode I gotta get into, and it's like a mindset at the time because you are nervous, but you're just not gonna let your nervousness hinder you from performing. That's a fact. So like I want to know, what is that preparation? For those that don't know what's the behind the scenes of what goes behind those that perform, we might think it's just like easy, like, oh, fine, she could just dance. But we don't know like what's going on in your mind with your preparation. So,
I mean, first thing, especially since I got these braces, I be doing tongue twisters. I got to get the mouth ready to move. Like, we not about to be slurring no words. Second, I breathe, like, and like I really like take intentional breaths, like take all the air in and breathe out because my heart just be racing. And it's like you gotta calm yourself down. Like it be a mixture of anxiety, anxiousness, just ready to get going. And then it's also like I run them poems back to back to back. And it's like I read it differently. Like once I got the poem in my body, like I know how I'm gonna perform it. Yeah. It's much less about me performing it all out because you still gotta preserve your voice. But it's more so making sure you got the words, making sure if the crowd go crazy or they tell you to run it back, you could run it back. And if you know already that you can't run it back, when they tell you to run it back, girl, you better keep going. Like don't get cute on stage. You better keep going because you gonna run it back and it's gonna mess you up. So that's like my preparation. And I just pray. And I just, like, gotta just silence something. Like, you gotta just slow down. Yeah. Like, no running up and down. No going to get stuff last minute. None, like, because also that, like, I need to be ready. Yeah. Like, I need to be ready so when they call my name, I'm ready to walk out. Yeah. Like, so I also, like, ask, like, when am I gonna go? Yeah. And please stick to that. Because sometimes people don't stick to that. Like, they say, oh, you're gonna go at this time. And they're like, oh, you're next. Right. What do you mean next? I need a second. I need a second. Right. Because
it's all the preparation.
Yeah, but it's really important. One, tongue twisters. Because you need to articulate your words. And two, you really gotta breathe. Like, honestly, like, breathing is something that, like, you take for granted sometimes. Yeah. But, like, you don't want to get up there and sound. Cadence, right? So you got to calm down. You got to breathe. Like, I remember when I went on stage for the Shawn Mendes at Global Citizen. And the lady, she was, like, the stage handler. She was, like, works for, like, all the big artists because she does, like, the Grammys and all that. Right. And she told me something that stuck with me. She said, when you get up there, don't start your poem until you're playing it in front of the mic. Wait 3 seconds. Take a deep breath in. Exhale, and then perform. Yeah. Don't worry about nothing else before you breathe. Don't worry about what you're going to say when you get there. Then you go. Once you finish, you stay there. You take in the applause. You don't run off stage, and then you go. Yeah. And ever since then, that's what I do. That's what I teach my classroom. That's what, like, that's it. Yeah. Like, word.
Catch your breath. So what I'm thinking about is, like, we born and raised in a certain neighborhood. We got certain experiences, and in a certain environment, we are privy to certain conditions, right? Yeah. And I wanted to know, like, the best way I could word is, like, how did you learn to control your rage? Like, when you seen youth dying, right? You seen this being portrayed on media in a certain way, right? Like, how have you learned to control your rage into that time?
Yeah, I honestly, I've never been someone who was like, I'm lying. I'd never been someone that let her anger turn into like fighting, but I've always been someone that, like, when it came to, like, stuff that, like, I didn't like institution-wise, like, whether it's at a school, whether it's at a camp, whether it's on a basketball team, stuff like that, I was always the one that would speak up, right? So any injustices I've seen since younger, like, I've always been the one to speak up. And I think that came from me, like, being the only girl hanging with guys. So, like, I never felt real rage when it came to, like, the system and just the way, like, people view me as a black person until I went to Massachusetts. And it was in that moment where I realized that, like, I either could be that angry black woman that they want me to be, or I could use that anger and let that fuel me to make actual change. And that was when I started realizing that I have to calm down and I have to assess situations and I have to speak to be heard, right? And sometimes when you're speaking from passion and when you're, like, really angry, people turn their ears off. And you could be saying some real stuff, but, like, people just don't like the way you're talking to them. All right, cool. So let me break it down to you. Right? And then when I'm done with you, I'm going to go to my friends, I'm going to go to my people, and I'm going to go ballistic. But I learned that when it comes to showing up in front of people, right, to not let them see the anger, right? Or if they see the anger, not let them see it as, like, nastiness, but see it as a passion, right? And I'm telling you this because I feel this deeply, but I'm also not gonna let you get me out of character, and I'm also not gonna let you make me stoop to a certain level, right? But then when you see your friends going to jail, when you see your friends passing away, and when you see, like, so much potential get, like, stripped away, like, it's like I don't even get angry no more. Like, I just, like, get numb. And, like, I've been trying to figure out ways to, like, tap back into that emotion, but, like, just deal with the hurt and deal with the ways that we can, like, make things better for the next ones coming up. And, like, don't let the people who pass, don't let their death go in vain. And don't let my friends who's sitting up in a jail cell right now, making sure that when they come out, they have different avenues they could go so that they don't fall back into the same thing, right? So it's like, I could sit here and be mad about all of these things, or I could work so hard to create solutions and different action plans so that we could shift the narrative.
A fact. What I'm thinking about is, like, even for myself, I often will have conversation. I say, like, it's certain parts of us that we gotta, I don't want to say, like, let die, but in order for us to become who we are today, there were some things we had to let go.
That's a fact.
Right? And I want to know, what was one of the hardest things that you had to let go internally in order to become who you are today?
I would say being a people pleaser. And when I say being a people pleaser, I mean, like, not even just people outside of, like, me, but my immediate friends, my immediate family. I had to stop saying yes to everything. I had to stop feeling like I had to be there or the world was gonna crumble. I had to stop being the one that just does everything, because when I stopped doing everything for everybody else, I realized that I had so much time for myself. And I realized that I wasn't going crazy, and I realized it was okay to say no, because people say no all the time, right? People can't do it for me all the time, but when it's the other way around, I always felt like I had to, like, I had no choice. So I would say that part I really needed to let die, and it stemmed from forgiving my parents. Right? Even without a formal apology. It stemmed from understanding my parents, right? And realizing that I don't have to please them, right? And once I stopped feeling like I had to please my parents, right? Of course you want to make your parents happy, but you don't have to break your back to please them. Because at the end of the day, you have to choose yourself. And once I started choosing myself when it came to my family, I started choosing myself when it came to my friends, I started choosing myself when it came to my business, I started realizing, like, wow, Fanta, like, these people still here. What you was scared of? Like, they not going to leave you because you said no. Right. But you have to prioritize yourself. And once I did that, like, I unlocked a whole different beast. Like, and people respect that. Yeah. So.
Nah, that's a fact. That's a fact. Learning to say no. Because we get some no's all the time.
That's a fact.
But we feel like we could never give them. But we always receive them.
That's
right?
a fact.
So I did read your book. And it was a few, poems that stuck out to me. One in particular was, we spoke about the relationship that you have with your mother. And you do have even the title in itself, all the things, I never got to say. I was like, that's deep. Because some things we never got to say as a child. You didn't know how to say it. And if you knew you was going to say it, they wouldn't care about what you were saying. So you never got a chance to say it. And to actually put it in a book was dope. So the poem that stuck out to me was the letter you made to your mom, right? And it made me think about the friction our generation has with our elders. You know what I mean? Not just in our pursuit of our passions, but who we are. And I often have that with my stepfather. Like, it's some beliefs I have about this system that I stand on. Right? And they would look at me like, yo, something's wrong. But I'm like, nah, we just don't believe in what you believe in to the same extent, because we seen, like, what you've been through believing in that.
Yeah.
You feel me? That's insanity if I'm going to do the same thing you did and think a different result. There's no way.
That's a fact.
So I'm going to say part of the poem, right? And I want you to speak more to it, right? So you said... you know your poem, but it says, Mama already got my suit picked out, debated on purple or blue. I noticed a different lifestyle, something you're not accustomed to. But you brought me here, don't leave me here, because you're my mother and I need you. Right? And I think that was deep. Because we don't be asked to be born to this world.
That's a fact.
And it's some things that come with our experiences. You have the freedom to choose who you want to be. But often we don't feel like we have that freedom to do so and liberty in our household. So I want to know, like, if you could speak to a relationship with your mother, right? How did you gain comfortability in defining who you wanted to be and who you are, right? And walk us through that trajectory for yourself.
Honestly, it came outside of my parents. Like I said, I went to summer camp, and I had Heather. I'm going to just say Heather in particular, because I always call her my mentor, my Heather. That's her name. And she literally, like, took me under her wing, and she literally was just, like, she listened to me. And that was the first time I was like 12 years old, and that was the first time I felt heard by someone who's like a maternal figure.
Yeah.
And I remember just like telling her like my frustrations and telling her the things I was going through like as a 12-year-old girl. And I didn't get like a sense of judging, but more so like, okay, I hear you, and like, how can I pour into you? How can I help? What can I do to help you? What do you need so that you can feel better in situations? And that really helped me like mature and go through a lot of things that like you get from your mom. I got it from Heather, right? And it was that helped me go to Bard. It was Heather who helped me do financial aid. It was Heather who moved me into college, right? And it was like, these are things that she didn't have to do. She had kids of her own, right? And I know her kids. I know her husband. Like, I love the family. But it was like, she did that out of the kindness of her heart, right? And she worked at a summer camp, the summer camp I went to, and there were 50 other girls, right? But that she could have poured into. And like, she poured into them in different ways. But like, for me, I felt like God sent her, right? And God was like, if somebody doesn't come and pour into Fanta now, like, she may just, nobody knows the road she could take, right? Because I was going through so much, and I didn't have the language for it. When you're like 12 years old, you don't really know. And it's like, I finally had somebody who's listening to me. But as I'm telling this story, I realized that I had angels even before Heather, because I had a basketball coach who, my parents never came to basketball games because they always worked. So I remember one day she just came with like a bag of clothes, right? She was like a stud like me, but she was older. So she, she had clothes, came with a bag of clothes, gave me the clothes, and was just like, like, oh, like, I see like your parents and stuff don't come to the game or whatever. But like, I got you. Right. And she's actually the reason I got into that camp. Like, she's the one who helped me fill out all the forms. So she was the first person who really looked out for me. But with Heather, it just lasted a little longer. But it was those people, right? It was those maternal figures. It was just those women in my life. And I had many more after them who just poured into Fanta, who just seen that Fanta just need a little more loving on. And Fanta just a diamond in the rough. And let me pour into her and let me nurture her, because she's not just this outspoken, oh, my mouth used to be crazy. Right? My mouth used to be crazy. You couldn't tell me nothing. Right? But she's not just this girl who speaks out and wants to be disobedient to authority, but she's actually coming from a place of pain. So let's channel that and let's figure that out. And it was that made me strong enough to come back to my mom. And when I got older, like, I didn't come back to like my house and move back in till I was like 21 or 20. Like, so it was like all those years, for those 8 years, I was like on my own. I came home for holidays. And even then I was distant. So it was really all those people outside of the home that was like, we got you, Fanta. Our little angels along the way. That's why I always say, like, I'm never too big to have a village. I'm never too big to say I had people help me. I'm never too big to say I had people pour into me. Because that is what actually makes the difference. You don't get nowhere alone.
Right. And you say various times in the book, like, one day I will grow to love Fanta. Right? And I want to know, do you feel like you have grown to love who you are? Or is there certain areas that you're still working on?
I feel like I've grown to love Fanta and who she is as a person. And now I'm learning to love Fanta outside of, like, the poetry in the poet. I'm learning to love Fanta outside of the poet. I feel like I've learned to love Fanta in her poetry identity. I've learned to love the way I could grace a stage. I learned to love the way I show up. I learned to love the way I teach. I learned to love the way I impact kids, impact students. So now it's more so learn to love Fanta, like, as an adult. Fanta when the bills is due. Fanta when the money is tight, right? And just knowing that is not a like a perception of exact everything I am, right? And it's like, my success is something I work so hard for, but it's like, you're still you even without your success, right? So just now I'm working on pouring into me, even if I stop writing tomorrow, which I won't, but even if I had no other accolades to my name, right, I'm still going to love me for who I am. So that's where I'm at now, but I think we're doing a really good job than where I was when I wrote this. I say that for sure.
That's good, and that's the growth when you don't stop, right? You maintain the consistency, and that's important. One of the things I also wanted to ask was, how do I say it? What do you define would be your purpose? If you had to put it into words, what would you define your purpose to be?
I think my purpose is to empower others to find themselves through my words, right? And when I say that, I mean like empowering young African studs who didn't come out yet or who's battling with their identities, and not even just studs, just African people who are part of the LGBTQ who don't feel like they have the courage to come out, or who probably spend their whole life living in a closet, or who've had to be alienated from their family to be who they are. I write for them to let them know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And our story looks different, right? And I see y'all. Y'all not going through this alone, right? Because for a long time, I thought it was just me, right? So I write for them, right? I also write for the young girls and the young boys who grew up in the trenches, who felt like basketball or sports was their only way out, who felt like if they didn't make it rapping or bowling, then they ain't really have no dreams. I write for them to let them know like there's ways out. Like shit, I'm from Harlem. I'm really from the trenches, and I'm an author. I got a poetry book. Like you don't hear stuff like that, right? So I write for them to let them know that they could dream bigger, right? I write for my family to let them know that this generation is different, and the things we're doing and the way we can move the world and the way like our legacy could carry looks different than how it did in Africa, right? So I just write so people could see a life outside of themselves and envision a world where they could be all they want to be. And I also write for the people who feel like they're alone.
Facts. So I also want to ask, is there anyone you wish could hear your poems or could hear you as you are today? Because like me growing up, when I spoke even and I speak today, it's some people that's no longer here. I'm like, I ain't gonna lie, if they would say I wish they could see who I've grown to become, right? Is there anybody that you wish was like still around to be able to see you as who you have grown to be today?
It's two people I think about often. First is Miss Hall. She was my music teacher. She passed away when I was in like 10th grade, but she was like my middle school music teacher. So she passed away. No, I think it was like 9th grade, 10th grade. So it was probably 2 years after I left the school. And she always like, she was one of those teachers where you had to love her, but she wasn't the nicest teacher. She held you accountable, but she also poured into you. And Miss Hall always poured into me, right? But it wasn't on some like, I'm going to show you favoritism, but like I'm also going to let you know when you're doing good, and I'm also going to let you know when you're messing up.
Right.
And like I just wish that she was here to see like, yo, like like little old Fanta, 50-pound Fanta figured it out. Squeaky voice Fanta, she figured it out. And then Mr. C, he was my chess teacher, and he passed away at a young age. He was probably like in his mid-20s. And I wish he could have seen it because he really poured into me when I used to play chess. But like I stopped playing chess, and then like 2-3 years later after he passed, but I didn't really speak to him much. But like for some reason, like I always like think of him in like spurts. And like I feel like if he was still alive right now, he would be so proud of me, because I remember we had a connection because we both like D Wade, right? But like he was just someone who like I just talked to everything about. So I just knew if he would have seen me now, he'd be like, wow, like you really turned it around, like you really figured it out. So like I just think about people who like poured into me, who's just not here anymore, and it's like, damn, like, I know I would have made y'all proud. I know I'm making y'all proud.
I know, like, in our realm, we always, like, be active, you know. Sometimes we really busy. We always trying to figure out what's that next thing. Or sometimes we have weeks where it's like, man, back to back to back, right? But I want to know, when you do get the time to sit down and look back at, like, how you have grown, if you ever took time to reflect, right? What is it that you most proud of for yourself? And then what advice would you give the younger version of yourself?
Honestly, I'm going to say the thing that I'm most proud of is the fact that I never said no when it came to something that was foreign to me. Like when it came to writing poems on the spot, or when it came to writing poems about certain topics, or when it came to like things that weren't directly comfortable for me. I'm proud of myself for not giving up and actually taking that challenge and showing up and then doing a great job. And I'm proud of myself for not giving up when I was popped. I had no money. When I was working 3 jobs, when I was doing dry cleaning and security, and I was just doing whatever to get the bills paid. But I'm proud of myself for not giving in and not going back to what I knew would work. Not going back to the corporate world. Even though God wasn't going to let me in no matter what. He was going to make sure I stayed right. And then, what was the second question?
I was saying, what advice would you give to the younger version of yourself?
And then the advice I would give to the younger version of myself is, like, don't be so hard on yourself, girl. Like, I was so hard on myself. I still am hard on myself. Right. But now I'm a little nicer. Yeah. Like, I was so hard on myself to the point where, like, I could feel myself getting small. Like, and I would say to myself, like, stop worrying about what other people think about you. Yeah. And, like, just be exactly who you are, and the people who love you will love you, and the people who don't will not. And you don't have to try to fit into any rooms. You don't have to try to be nobody else, because people love Fanta for Fanta. And that's it, right? And I also wish I could have told her that she's beautiful. Like, I was looking back at my baby pictures like, girl, you was never ugly. Like, you was never ugly. But we grew up in a different time where, like, being dark-skinned, being African, like, that was just a whole, like, you was African booty scratcher. If the light went off, they didn't know where you was at. Like, you was, and I was skinny, so I was a Tootsie Roll. I was everything under the book, right? I didn't have no hair on my head. I was bald-headed. Like, the jokes didn't stop, right? And I wish that I knew that, like, I was still beautiful. Like, you was still beautiful. And like, now I know that. Yeah. So, yeah.
You mentioned your grandmother in your book as well, right? And I want to know, like, if she was here today, what would you tell her?
If she was here today, first I tell you, I'm not falling down no more. Cause I used to always fall, and I used to always bruise up my knees and stuff. And, like, when I would go visit Africa, it was after a while. She was like, just stop coming. Stop falling on the floor. I don't have no more bandages for you. Yeah. Right? But it was one thing that my grandmother did. She was a nurturer. And, like, she would always nurse me back to health. And I'll tell her, like, I can take care of myself now. Like, I listen to you. Like, I do the medicines. I do everything right now. And I know she'll be proud of me, because she'll be like, you really, like, use your voice for good, right? You're really out here, like, doing this poetry thing. Like, I don't know if she'll agree with the lifestyle I'm living, feel me? But that's a battle that, like, I'm gonna fight till the day I die, unfortunately. But I know she'll be proud of the way her granddaughter turned out, because, like, I'm really doing something that, like, I've never seen in my, like, family tree before. Like, I've never seen a poet in my family tree or my family dynamic. I've never, like, known my family to have, like, businesses and stuff. Like, most of my families are, like, teachers and stuff. So, like, I'm living up to that purpose. But it's, like, the way that I'm taking this, like, I just know she'll be like, yo, my granddaughter is amazing. Like, she's lit right now. Like, I did a good job with her. So, yeah.
I got a question that's a little bit different, right? I want to know, I feel like once you start to claim your calling and start moving in it, you can't really envision yourself doing anything different.
At all.
Right? But if you wasn't a poet, is there anything that you like, yo, if I could do something else, I'd like to be like this right here?
Yo. All right, besides basketball, because that's not fair. If I could be doing anything else, what would I be doing? What would you be doing for me? Honestly, probably like a photographer or like a photographer. Yeah. Like I like pictures and I like to take pictures and stuff, but like I just never get around to it. Yeah. But like if I wasn't a poet, I feel like I'd be a fire photographer. Like I cook up some ish.
Yeah.
Like, I cook
You'd be
us
good
a-
at that?
Yeah, I feel
So-
like I'd be a good photographer.
Yeah. And then my last question, right? I want to know. I mean, I first want to say, like, I want you to give a message to others about, the importance of their voice when they find it, and how to utilize it. Because I would say that you have touched a lot of lives with how you use your voice, right? And how there's a poem by Mary Williamson called Our Deepest Fear, and it says, like, as I'm liberated from my own fears, my presence automatically liberates others.
Yeah.
Right? And that thing of, like, how you started to utilize your voice has inspired others to use theirs. How you conquering your fears have inspired other people to want to conquer theirs. You feel me? Like, if you could give a message to the next generation that's coming about the importance of their voice, and utilizing it. And then I also want to know, like, has there ever been a time or a comment someone has made that made you really understood the impact that you all having?
Okay, so to answer the first part, to all of the young, inspiring, just humans, I would say, if someone is telling you you're doing too much, they not doing enough. And if something is weighing heavy on your heart, if there's anything that you feel like you need to speak up about it. You might not do it the right way, but you speaking up about it is going to leave room for people to correct you. Like, I hear you, but you could have went about it like this. But one thing that I don't want you to do is hold it in. Express it in any way you know how. Let it out, because you keeping stuff in doesn't benefit nobody, and it definitely doesn't benefit you, right? And like MJ say, you miss 1,000% of the shots you don't take, right? And you never know your full capacity until you step into it, right? And you're young. Now's the time to mess up. Now's the time to get it wrong. Now's the time to try a million different things, right? Now is the time to fuck it up, get it back, mess it up again, get it back, mess it up again, get it back, and get it back, and get it back. So that is what I'll say to y'all. Like, do it wrong 1,000 times before you get it right. And never be too afraid to ask for help. Respect the ones who came before you. Find a mentor. Respect your mentor. And never try to feel like you're bigger than where you are. Because that is the one way you'll stunt your growth. Never, ever get comfortable. Ever.
Facts.
And, is that a question?
Nah, I was going to say, what has been like a comment somebody has given you? Or a reaction that you still remember to this day? And it's like, yo, I ain't know my words have that much of an impact.
Yo. I had got a comment from somebody. I believe it was an email or DM. And they said that they were thinking about ending it all, but they heard my poem, and that pushed them to push through. Yeah. And I was like, wow, like my words, like. But then I think of it like my words are what made me push through, right? So who am I? Like, why wouldn't I think that I had the ability to push others? And it was that made me realize, like, nah, like. You have a gift, and you have something that you will be robbing the world if you kept it to yourself. And then the second comment was when somebody told me that I was anointed, like I said earlier. And it was like, in that moment, I got chills. Like, it was like, you're here for a reason, and you're, like, the way you convey your words and your message, like, it has the power to really move people.
Right.
And don't ever give that up. And, people always tell me, don't ever give it up. But it's different. It was different that time. I was like,
you felt it, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Right? So it was those two that really made me like, your words and the things you got. Because, anybody could do a poem. Anybody could tell you something. But certain people have the power to make you feel. Like, you have the power to make people feel, right? I have the power to make people feel. And we will be doing the world a disservice by stunting our voice. So,
Facts. And then you gotta tell the people where they can find you. You know,
Oh,
I know you got
yeah.
your show coming up, but the tickets is sold out.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta tell them they can get this book from, your
Word.
apparel, all the above.
Or sold out dates. December 13th, I'm having my first ever one-woman
We
show. Unfortunately, y'all be seeing this too late. All the tickets is sold out. But you can still support me if you want to hear more from me. At my website, fantaballo.com is where you can buy my book for things I never got to say. I also have some merch out. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, you can find me at Fanta Ratty. That's FANTA RATTY. And yeah, so I'll be looking forward.
And then I want to make sure I let y'all all know that what we building here is a village, but most importantly, we want y'all to understand the power of your voice, because we believe we all have a story. It just takes us to find the courage to be able to effectively articulate it and stand amongst others to say it, because there's some people that also can relate to what it is that you've been through. But like she stated, you rob people of that freedom and liberation they gain through you if you allow the world to silence you, right? So this Off the Wake Up, we peel back the layers of who you are. We had our first guest, Fanta, in the building, and it was a pleasure. I hope y'all enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to building this village, and one day we're going to start having in person, bringing some guests. So that's it. Off the Wake Up, Michael Pierre. Let's do it.
We out of here.
Voice.
You see what I got on.